how do we do that in full acknowledgement of the pressure of time? Because if there are many injustices in this world, all of which need addressing, but climate has an internal ticking clock. Yeah. As Rebecca said, this is the decisive decade. And science has been abundantly clear that we need to be at 1/2 the current level of global emissions by 2030. So the despair, and I said, you said I don't feel despair, but I can certainly relate to despair, because it just seems like such a huge mountain to move within every day a shorter period of time. And every day that date of 2030 is one day closer. And we don't see the corresponding progress of that future being every day one day closer to today. And so we are caught here between the grief, the anger about what is not being done, and the knowledge that this is not something that is elastic.
Right.
I firmly believe that human rights, poverty, injustice, gender inequality, et cetera, all of those issues need addressing, and none of them have a deadline after which it's going to be very, very difficult to address.
And they all intersect.
And they all intersect.
Around the issue of climate.
So that's the challenge. The challenge is to put our arms around this increasing complexity in decreasing amounts of time.
So how do you see that being done?
Well, the first thing that I think is very clear, and both of you have spoken to it, is not to huddle up underneath our, blanket or sheet or whatever and say, can't do it. So climate doomism to me is adjacent to climate denialism, right? Both steal the agency that we have and paralyze whatever could be. So I put a lot of energy into enticing people out of their doomism, because it's not because I do not resonate with their pain. I am in that pain 27 hours a day, but precisely because of that, right? Precisely because of that. And so to me, the first step is to really figure out what is our mindset. How are we turning up in the world? How are we doing ourselves? And Rebecca has written, copious books about hope. And I just chose the word optimism, but we're talking about the same thing, right? And so to understand that what we need here as we go out of the gate, is a positive, constructive mindset that allows us to harness everything that I have inside, that you have inside, because it's going to take all of us. And if we go at it from a doomism or a already defeatist point of view, then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Then of course we're not going to do it. So it really is absolutely critical to ground ourselves in a positive, constructive, searching mindset of what else is out there that we can bring to bear on this. And I think I don't know if it's yours, Rebecca, but one of my favorite definitions for hope is it's a verb with its sleeves rolled up.
Mm-hmm. Not mine, but wonderful.
But wonderful, right? Because it's not simply about sitting in a chair or, just lying and going, oh, okay, well, I hope somebody's going to take care of this. No. It's about rolling up your sleeves, right? It's about getting into the mud, standing in the mud really deeply, and therefore giving it our all. So And I think, you know, we all agree on that this is not, it's not an irresponsible giving up or denying the science. I mean, let us please, before we finish this session, let us please acknowledge that science has just told us that we are witnessing temperatures that have not been on this planet in 120,000 years. 120,000 years. I've been working on climate change all my adult life. I never thought, honestly, I never thought that we would beat that kind of record. That, you know, yes, we've had temperatures, you know, higher than the past 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years.
Recorded sort of in human history, with
In
people,
human
you know,
history.
which is like 50,
But not into the
100,
ice
150
cores.
years, but not 120,000.
120,000. And then that really makes you think like, okay, so are we playing Monopoly here? Right? Are we playing Monopoly or any other game with life as we know it on this planet? And we know that life as we know it is not necessarily going to be the life that is in the future.
Even in the next decade.
Well, for sure not in the next decade. Yeah. But still, it is a call to our sense of, if we're here right now, what is it that we bring to bear? And so to me, yes, of course, it is a lot about technologies, and Rebecca, you mentioned them. You know, I could say, yes, of course, we're going exponential with wind, and we're going exponential with solar, and we're going exponential with batteries, and we're going exponential with EVs. All of that is true. And it's not just about technological fixes. It's about who we are, values.
You and values.
Yep. We need we need a new system of values. You know, we need both. It's a kind of physical and spiritual things that go together. And so, you know, I find renewables incredibly exciting, but it's far from all we need. And if I may interject, one thing I find really dismaying is that there's a kind of peasant fatalism among the upper middle classes, a sense that the future has already been decided. I run into it over and over. I had somebody at a climate talk I give say, why should I engage in something where I don't know the outcome? And like my head exploded. It's like, well, then you would never have children, go on a date, talk to a stranger, you know. Like,
get in your car, go for a walk.
Yeah. And so I think that's one of the really destructive frameworks. And the idea that it's too late is that the future has already been decided. And something I talk about a lot, I'm going to talk about here, is I got really deeply involved in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, which was, like a lot of our climate crises we're seeing now, not just a natural disaster, racism, environmental injustice, the social, you know, the social and the physical infrastructure decided on by the social hierarchy left a lot of people to drown and be stranded in New Orleans when 80% of the city went underwater because the levees failed from a Category 4, not a Category 5 hurricane even. But what happened the next day is there was bumper-to-bumper boat traffic of people who own little fishing boats and pleasure boats, etc., trying to get into the city.
To help.
To rescue people who are stranded on roofs and freeway overpasses, etc., in blistering humid heat with no food, no water, no clean clothes, because many of them had swum through the oil industry's filthy waters when a lot of that poured into the kind of mess. And that's the spirit in which I think we always have to live. We get our boats in the water. If you don't put your boat in the water, you can't rescue anybody. You're not going to rescue everybody. You don't know if you can rescue anybody, but you know if you don't try, you won't. You definitely can't.
Exactly.
And so with climate, people want it to either be we can save everything or we can save nothing. And another framework I run into is thinking in absolutes. Either everything's fine or we're all doomed. And that gray area, which is where we've always lived one way or another, where you can't save everything, but you can save something, and nothing is more worth doing, I think is one of the things I really try and convey.
Absolutely.
And so it's these kind of absolutist, all or nothing, good or evil, perfect or fatally corrupt, You know, that there's all these sort of binaries.
And
so
in
the
that
idea
range,
is-
in that
yeah.
range between black and white, most of the space is gray. Hence, there are
actually-
many,
yeah.
many possibilities.
I think of Suzuki Roshi in the expert's mind is one thing, but in the beginner's mind or any. But also that we always talk about the black and white, and it's a full color spectrum, and you see things that complex, that it's full color rather than the blackout or the whiteout of perfect or grotesquely wrong. And so it's just really, I feel like a lot of what I'm doing is trying to
Paint that piece.
liberate people from paralyzing, constricting frameworks to let them feel hope, feel their own strength, feel possibility, feel connection, feel engagement. And what I see with a lot of the groups I'm involved with is that we're all trying to build on-ramps for people to become engaged, because we need civil society, we need the climate movement to become more powerful than the fossil fuel industry. And I think that it's partly literally about political power, but it's also a battle of values, which is why this is also about what our friend Joanna Macy calls the Great Turning. And I see those values changing. We're not waiting for something to start. We're in the middle of it. Mm-hmm. It is changing. It needs, we need more and faster, but it's happening. And that's where a lot of my excitement comes from, that can coexist with grief and anxiety.